Hello and welcome to Namaste with Renee. I am your host, Renee Marcou, CEO of the iHeart Academy and president of the nonprofit Brady's Foundation. In this podcast, we talk about how to enhance your wellness and disrupt the limitation mindset so you can thrive with a healthy mind, body, and spirit. Hello and welcome to Namaste with Renee. I'm your host, Renee Marcou, and welcome to the show. I have a very special guest to introduce you to today, as we're going to discuss energy healing, spirituality, and how generational trauma unconsciously programs the energy field. So please join me in welcoming Amanda Monnier to the show today. Amanda is a holistic healer, a published author, and a podcast host of New Earth Visionaries. She transitioned into her soul work from a career in law enforcement after feeling the nudge to go all in on herself. So welcome to the show, Amanda. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hi, Renee. Thank you so much for having me. I can just tell by even the conversation prior to hitting record that this is just going to be so divinely guided and so beautiful. So I'm just so grateful to be here with you.
Oh, thank you so much. You are such a beautiful, bright soul. And just knowing you in the short time I've known you, I just see your radiance. So thanks for shining that upon all of the listeners here.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel the same way. This is just feel all warm and fuzzy. You know, when you have meet those people and you're like, oh.
Yes, it's a good thing my heart's feeling it too.
Yeah.
So you have such an incredible story, and I know that there's so many different things that we can really dive deep into today. If you wouldn't mind to start sharing, what really helped you or sparked that light within you to be on the path that you are today?
Yeah, it was actually the darkness that sparked it.
Oh,
It was so interesting. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I was in a career in law enforcement for about 6 years. And that was like the kind of triggering of my awakening in consciousness, my spiritual awakening, if you will. And so it was a couple years in, and I had this extremely painful breakup. But what it was, knowing this now, it was this super painful pattern. It was all around just this identity of not being worthy. My light's too bright. Everybody leaves. This abandonment wound rooted in childhood from my parents' separation. And so when that breakup happened, it just triggered this deep, dark density coming to the surface. And then I just started like on this path, and it started kind of that more external search, later turned more inward, because I come to explain this as like, oh, it's just a journey back home to the truth of who you are. And so, and we can take it like day by day and bit by bit. Like it doesn't need to be this big, like arduous process where we're looking, like 10 years down the line. And, it's just like, okay, what's right in front of me to do right now? And so it has just been the most humbling of journeys. And that's why I always preface like anything I share, like take what resonates and leave the rest. Because one of the like most beautiful things I've learned is this, like this is our own unique journey. We each have a unique soul frequency, a unique soul blueprint. We're not in it, we're not exactly the same as everybody else. So it's just so powerful to plug into our own source connection instead of, outsourcing and, putting others as the authority over our lives. And so that event was what really sparked it. And at this point, I'm like, because I've found that it's like we have those moments of expansiveness, right? And then sometimes it can be followed by those moments of density and contracted. But it's like once we felt even the essence, even just a little bit of the truth of who we are and that source connection within us, I call it God source universe connection. It's like there's no unknowing it. And then for me, it's just become like literally my life, part of my life's work is like, I just choose this. This is number one for me, no matter what. Like aside from everything else, this is literally number one for me.
yes. Oh my goodness. Everything that you shared so many powerful statements and even powerful questions of pause. And I know that the listeners, whether hearing it and consciously receiving it or subconsciously receiving the energy you're sharing, is already placed in a healing code in their heart, because it really is literally looking at the authority of your life and allowing yourself to be that. And it takes such bravery to go to that space, right? It takes such bravery to have that experience of a childhood traumatic, really dark wound come forward in your life as an adult, right? Or even a teenagers, if a teenager listening is experiencing this as well, it takes such bravery to really look at that and to align to the self and say, I'm putting my faith in you, God, source, universe, and I am going to step forward. I know what I have to do in the physical realm to switch things up. For your example, it was the career, which was sparked through the contrast, right? And the contrast with your partner at the time and ending things that really brought that peace to your life, that the root that was really from the childhood trauma that had surfaced.
Yeah.
I went through something really similar myself, and I didn't realize that that abandonment wound that I had within myself from childhood, abandoning myself and other things that had taken place then that had become that pattern. So I'm really interested to learn, like, how did you navigate learning what that pattern was? Like, how were there certain tools that you used?
Oh, yeah. And it's definitely changed. What I've come to understand is like, because I feel like sometimes we can do this and then we notice the same pattern coming up and we can be like, oh my gosh, I'm not making any progress, which isn't true.
Mm,
And wherever you're at, I also want to say for those of you listening is perfect. Like right now, you're right where you're supposed to be. You're right where you need to be. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. There's none of that.
that's
It's
right.
simply about releasing all the things that aren't you and never were. And so I've kind of, the way I explain it, this metaphor was used and I was like, oh, okay, I kind of like that, is that like we can heal in spirals. So some of these deeply rooted patterns that are just these massive identity structures that we've literally carried around our entire lives, most of the time I found, in at least in my journey, it's not something where it's going to change tomorrow after like one reflection on it.
Mhm.
But there are certain things, because I'm here for the miracle vibe as well. So there are certain things where we can shift things in a moment, in an instant. And I'm not saying that we even can't shift these big identity structures, but what I found is that, especially for this deep core wound that was really, really ingrained in me, and all the stories and all the pain around this abandonment, my light's too bright, I need to shut down, like my throat was closed, I was that kid who'd sit in the back in class, like would never speak out, would drop classes. If I had to do like a presentation, I would literally drop a class or leave a school.
Yes,
And
I
now I have a podcast,
do.
so these things can be neutralized for sure.
Yes,
Yeah, but
exactly.
to answer your question, I found that healing, at least the process that I've used and that I absolutely love, and this is always ever evolving and ever changing as we continue to expand our consciousness. But I have found that it's three components. And the first one, or one of them, not in any specific order, is conscious creation. So stepping into the frequency of of that truth of who you are or what you're choosing, and embodiment of that frequency, because that aspect of you is already here. Or if it's like, let's say your soulmate, they're already on this planet. So stepping into that frequency in the now, planting those energetic seeds. And I always say this is something more expansive, because the universe like knows what's up a bit more than I do. I'm a human. I'm a human. And so the second component being presence, being in the now, being okay with being in the now, and being okay with if this manifestation shows up tomorrow, a year from now, or if it doesn't show up, because literally all we have is this now moment. And so if we can't sit with ourselves in the now, which it took me a hot minute to be able to actually be able to sit with myself. I would always be in that do mode. So it's a different frequency of shifting from that doer to the pause and to the receiving, to the listening, because when we're doing, we're not in that energy of being able to receive information, whether it be the guidance or honoring that inner child that's coming up for healing. And then the third component being that healing. So gosh, there's been just a variety of different things. And that's why it's so beautiful, because there's so many tools out there. So my recommendation to people is always find what resonates and try different things out. Like I use energetic allergy healing, a recode method, like higher self recodes, where we connect with the higher self and give instructions, because time, I don't feel, is linear. It's not, it's a human construct. So we can actually go back to an event. Like, let's say we're talking about this, generational trauma and these core wounds, we can actually go back to that original event, and we can actually templatize and recreate that event, shifting pain to wisdom, which then literally does a change history on all the subsequent events. So we don't have to keep playing out the patterns. We don't have to keep feeling the pain. It's so powerful, and we all have the ability to do this. And so that's why I'm so passionate as well about reminding people of their power and their own medicine, their own healing ability. I'm not doing the healing. The healing is coming through me to your higher self. You're doing the healing through your own divine connection. So it's just, there's so many powerful ways. And it's literally, I just believe anything is possible if we expand and open our consciousness to that.
Absolutely. And when I was on your website, what you are saying, like, literally speaks through your website and how you serve people. And I love the words that you're using, because I know they are leading edge words. These aren't common terms to maybe the way we grew up, right? Like, they weren't, maybe discussed. I know, at least from me and my experience and a lot of my clients that I serve, like, through my experiences as well, that it's, we, the leaning into that new language, right? And I know that your podcast is based on new earth properties and visionaries and things like that. So I just love that the language you're even choosing is already lighting us up, right? As we're sitting here and receiving. So thank you for that. And your tools are amazing. The three tools that you shared for sure are absolutely amazing. And I encourage anybody who, is leaning in and kind of maybe bumping up against some of those things, or the generational trauma, like really having a look at the tools that Amanda had shared, because they are very powerful and I've used them myself as well. So yeah, oh my gosh, I feel like we could go anywhere from here.
Oh yeah, totally. I feel like we could go on for hours, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. I know, that's another thing too. So what do you share with us? Like, what is it that you do in your work now? Because we talked about you going into your soul's work. Like, what is it that you are doing to serve others, or even yourself, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I love this question. So there are a couple things that are really near and dear to my heart, and I have been really playing around and contemplating my gene keys. So if anyone is maybe new to that, I would recommend
To
maybe,
that.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
pulling your profile. It's just, honestly, I feel like it's just this beautiful compass placed in your hand, and you get to contemplate these different archetypes. So you have 11 in your profile, there's 64, and they're based on your unique genetic makeup, your hologenetic profile. And so it's just been so beautiful to play around with. I'll give an example real quick. So my life's work, the gift, is all around anticipation, hence New Earth Visionaries, hence we are writing the freaking script.
Yes.
Yeah, we're anticipating, we're creating the new templates, the new paradigms. And my first year in business, I was trying to do stuff the old way. And I was like, why isn't it working? What's going on here? I was like, should I, like, excuse me, God, do I need to like hit the eject button? Like, what is happening? And like, it was, no, like, we're just here bringing in the new. And as we do that, the right people are going to magnetize towards, when they're ready, right? When their soul's ready for it. And so to answer your question first, yeah, the gene key is amazing. So if for any of you who want to pull your profile, or you can reach out, I'll walk you through the process, but you can just do it on the Gene Keys website, and you already get like 4 paragraphs I've heard people say, like, literally those 4 paragraphs made me feel more seen than I've ever felt in my entire life. So it's beautiful. So that has been something that I've used as a beautiful compass, because it's an awareness. It's not black and white. And that's one thing I always say, is this journey is not black and white. It's not, can we have a third option, please? Like, there's so much black and white in this planet, which creates separation. So what I'm bringing in is really these energetics of neutrality and harmony. And what I mean by that is that when we come back into the truth of who we are, that essence and that peace and that like love, that's what love is. It's not all the attachment and all the, the charged stuff that we're told. And so a couple of things that I have a program called Radiance, which is all about bringing health, vitality, and radiance back into the physical body. Because the thing is when we work on one level, it ripples out to everything, because we're multidimensional beings. So if we're doing work with the body, it's going to affect mind, body, spirit, all the bodies, right? So that's been something. I struggled with acne up until I was 31. I'm 32 now. And it was tied to these deeply rooted identity structures I've been speaking of. And it took me 8 years of being in this healing work to unravel these. And so I've always been so passionate about the physical body. And so this program dropped in, and I was like, and Radiance is actually a gene key. There's a gene key. We all have our radiance. So our radiance is tied to our health, vitality, and our aura. Like if you notice someone's aura, right, you can even just be in their space, and there are just little beautiful codes in the aura where it'll activate this remembrance in you, just by, like you mentioned, even unconsciously, consciously, just by dropping into the space. Like potentially by you listening to this podcast, you're getting little nuggets, little codes, little things that are just waking something up in your energy field. And we all have a different template. That's the thing. So it's all working through your higher self. I don't believe in this, cookie cutter thing. We're downloading. One of my dear friends, she's doing this money program right now, and she's helping people download their own divine money template, not someone else's, yours. And so really what I am bringing to the world is just this helping people step back into the truth of who they are, embodying their own essence, and really just moving from a place of that harmony and that equilibrium within, so that they can really know who they are. They can trust themselves again. And, there are all kinds of different tools, but I always say, like, everything you always needed was always inside all the time. And so, I have a space where, in my community, where people can come weekly, and we do this type of work, the healing work, the conscious creation, bringing in breath work. So just, really my job is to just provide, hey, here's this tool, here's this suggestion. You get to take what resonates, and then you get to expand that within yourself, activate your own intuition muscle, and remember again the truth of who you are, not just because someone else said that this is what to do.
Exactly. Oh, that is so beautiful. And it's so, every theme that you keep sharing about is the authenticity. Like that's the word that I keep hearing. It's authentic self, it's authentic voice, it's showing up as your own, authority figure, right? It's really so incredible. And I know the work that you do is just transforming people's lives. I mean, even just going to your website. And I love so much that you brought up healing codes, because those are things that I'm going to start talking about more in my community and on this channel, Namaste with Renee, the podcast, because I want to help any everyday people who are ambitious in their self-growth or mindset growth to really start allowing that new way to come in, that new way of the 5D, the language that you're using, right? And it really all is drawing people back to the truth of who they are. And even in the work that I do, like I know you and I we walk similar paths. And for me, like when I talk manifestation for people, it's so interesting and so cool to witness them to come to the table and say, this is what I want, but really they actually want something a little bit different. Okay. And it's like, we are helping them, because it's really, it's through us as the conduit, being that energy, being that tool. And then they get to take that and receive and work with their higher self, as you had mentioned. And I think that's absolutely beautiful and so important for people to understand that, like, when you go to a coach or to a healer, like, you're not just like, okay, like, use your magic wand on me, right? It's like you're helping them inject that energy within themselves. Yeah. And they get to do that work. And how empowering is that? Oh, that's like such a good feeling. But anyhow, I always digress when I talk, but
no, I love it. It's so beautiful. And I just love that. Yeah. It's like, sounds like we do a different flavor, similar work. And it's just, that's the thing. It's like, it's a resonance thing too. So it's like, for me, I'm like, the people that I have worked with, or even like my mentors, it's like,
Mhm.
I've never had to be talked into it. So we're also
Yeah.
shifting, I feel, as far as like the old, like kind of paradigms in business and the way that we
Yes.
offer this stuff. It is that resonance because it's like a frequency thing. You can't fake frequency. You can say all kinds of things. We can say all
Right.
kinds of things with our words, but
Exactly.
that energetic embodiment, that resonance, that frequency, you can't fake that. You can't fake that at all.
You can literally feel it. You can see things manifesting from that way of life or that mindset or just where you're at. And it's such a really a miracle. And that's such a piece too that even like before back in the day when I was first starting to manifest, like you said, there wasn't much convincing. It was just easy for me to be like, oh, this is the truth. This feels right to me. I'm taking this into my wisdom and making this a part of my life. And then things started shifting and changing. So I'm like, wow, this is real. This is true, right? And I'm like clapping at like all what the universe is bringing me. And I think because there was such less resistance pushing that away, right? Pushing anything that I really did want, desire, want to experience, knew as my truth that I was going to be bringing forth into the world. It just felt so easy. It wasn't much convincing at all. And now it's funny, but I think the experience that I've had as a coach over the last 12 years is watching people like get in their own way, right? Or like have these other past things come up that are like, no, wait, but are you sure? And I feel like sometimes maybe that's just the people that I'm attracting in my work, right? That I get to open their eyes to the beauty of the truth of what this is.
Yeah, yeah, and what I've learned too, it's like, and seen in my own life, it's like those patterns and those stories that come up, like what you're mentioning with that you were noticing with some of the clients. It's like, we oftentimes like defer to the pattern and the story to let that dictate. That's the unconscious programming. That's potentially some of the ancestral programming.
Mm.
But it's like so simple. Like I'll give one little tool that people can use. If you're feeling that story, literally by closing your eyes and taking a deep, deep breath in and out of your nose and breathing out and maybe placing a hand on the body, bringing it back into the body, that breaks the story up. That literally breaks the story up. That breaks up also, like if we, for the science people, I'm more woo than science, but but what that does as well though, is that breaks those neurological pathways, those synapses that were like, oh, we were firing this way. We've been firing in this way for 30 years. But if we can be the observer a bit more often, and we could be more gentle and kind with ourselves too, because a lot of times those stories aren't kind and no judgment, right? We don't have to shame the shame or judge the judgment. But oftentimes those stories are just really, they were probably offered to you, right? Maybe when you were a child and it was just like, oh, you're too much, or oh, you can't trust anybody. Maybe it was even something like external, like your mom's belief, can't trust people. And then you're like, hear yourself. I heard myself yesterday. It was so funny. I was on a walk and I was chatting with a friend, and I heard this little voice in my head being like, yeah, you win some, you lose some. I was like, that's interesting. I said, okay, higher self, like, can we go ahead and just cancel, clear, delete all time, space, dimensions? We're just going to let that one go because that doesn't feel resonant anymore. But I
Mhm.
like observed it rather than be like, yeah, because normally I would say it, right? It's normally what you would say. And I was just like, oh, so I just took a moment and it was more like curiosity. Like if we could approach this stuff with a bit more curiosity, then
Mm.
it's like it takes the charge, and that's part of like the harmonization, because it's just frequencies. Like it's just, if you think of like a phone program, right? The energetic or the software programs on our phones, like we have those energetic software programs running in our field. So we can literally delete them with
Wow.
love, and we can choose something that's more expansive, that's actually true.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So the tool is to breathe in and out. Stop right there in the moment. Breathe in and out through your nose, putting your hand on your heart and allowing that disconnect from
Yeah.
that story.
Yeah. It's
That,
such a simple one, right?
wow.
It's like
I'm going
sometimes
to,
we make this so complicated. I found that to be just a simple one, and just
yeah.
noticing it and sending it love and just saying,
Yes.
okay, I choose to let you go. And I ask, and it's like, sometimes I think like, even with the healing, it's like, oh, I don't know how. Well, okay, higher self, divine team, creator, like, just help me let this go. I just choose to let this go. And then just when we feel into our heart and we activate our heart field, the heart coherence, our heart has more neurons than anywhere in the body, over 40,000 neurons in the heart, more than the brain. The gut has a lot as well, but the heart field, this
Yeah.
is where the magic's at. That's why we always hear people say, follow your heart, but there's actually reasons behind why.
Oh
So
my
when we
God.
actually activate that heart field, the
Mm.
frequency, because if everything is frequency and we have the frequency, that high vibrational frequency, it cancels out those the low dense vibrational frequencies. It's just so powerful. So that's why when we drop into a heart, we can even go so deeper as another little thing you can do is you can feel into, it can be anything. It could be like a moment of what you'd like to feel. It can be like a memory, but feeling into when you just felt the most love, like nurturing feeling in your entire life. Like you'll just think of it, like think of being with like, you know, your partner that lights you up, or think of just like how much you love yourself if you're in that space. And then that just opens up your heart and you're like, okay, you can actually use that energy in the moment to let go of these little stories and patterns that are coming up with love. Okay, I release you with love. It feels so good. So
Yeah.
simple.
Oh my goodness. So simple and so powerful
Yeah.
that these are just and things we can do. We don't always need the
Yeah.
journal. I literally am like a lover of writing, so I will write and journal everything down. But for sure, like that's in the moment, no matter where you're at. Wow, how beautiful. And just being loving and kind to yourself, like you said, like not shaming the shame
Yeah.
and not blaming the blame. Is that the terms that you use?
We can add that one too. I like that.
Okay.
Shaming the shame is one, and not judge the judgment.
And not judge the
Yeah, but I
judge.
like don't blame the blame either,
Don't
you know?
blame the blame. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
it's just
Your power
we're throwing
back.
gasoline onto the little hurt 5-year-old girl is what we're doing. We're
Wow.
like, oh well, you should just get over it, right? Like what we were probably told. It's like, well, what if we actually just go in there and even in our mind's eye, in our heart, and just like ask that child what they need? And maybe they don't even want to be held. Maybe they just, can I sit here with you, or can I hold you? And in your mind's eye, in your heart, like energetically, time and space, it's like it's all one, right? This is all one. So when we think of like, oh well, that's kind of weird, how could I go back in time? Like that to me is what time travel is. And there's a piece of what time travel is being able to go back into that moment and give that little child that part aspect of you. Because it's even like, you know, if you find yourself in a lot of arguments or a lot of, you know, combative situations, or a lot of times we're getting triggering, oftentimes it's just our unconscious like inner child wounding. Like
Yes.
it's so often that wounding, because we're just so impressionable when we're children and we're just doing our best, and most of the time our parents are doing their best. And so, you know, it's like when we have everybody that's in their unconscious and we're not coming conscious, being, that's why being the observer and being in our conscious is so incredibly powerful,
Wow.
because it allows us to see this from a more expansive perspective, which is so much bigger than our, like, you know, the human in us, right? The ego, the unconscious,
Yes.
that is like, oh well, this is the only way. And it's like, well, if you say that, that can be true and that's fine, right? Maybe there's a lesson down there for you. Maybe
Mhm.
there's something beautiful, because I found, you know, going into like the depths of the pain is where I've learned like the deepest lessons, where I've got to know myself and meet myself at the deepest places.
Right. Yes, I'm totally with you on that for sure. And then what comes out is that like gorgeous gold phoenix rising, and you just get to, let anything that led you there just be not even an energetic story that hooks into you and your field, but just a memory of growth and expansion and returning back to that beautiful vortex, which we get to play in and create from and manifest from and feel into. And that is so beautiful. Amanda, this has been an incredible conversation. I
Yeah.
can't thank you enough for your shares, for your tools, for your guidance and your wisdom, for shining your light here upon me and all who are listening. Where can we find you after this episode?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's just been an honor and I'm so grateful. I can just feel the field of the podcast space you've created. It just like, almost felt myself like with tears of joy several times. Like it just like, that doesn't happen to me every time I'm on a podcast. It feels so beautiful. So yeah, so Instagram was the main social media that I use, and I actually just created an insight timer like teacher profile. So I have like one meditation on there. I'm going to be jumping on there more often because I just feel guided to connect in a different way. I'm still on social media, but there's a different resonance there for me. So if you're on Insight Timer, you can actually find me there. Under my name, Amanda Monnier, and then my podcast, New Earth Visionaries, if you've enjoyed this conversation and would like a bit more.
Yes, absolutely. And would you share your website as well?
Yeah, it's my name, Amanda Monnier.
Oh my God, beautiful. And would you spell it the last name?
Yeah. It's Monnier.
Beautiful.com.
Yes.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. What an absolute pleasure to have you here today. I just am so thankful you sparkled your light in this container in the network. And I know for sure that we're going to be co-creating again in the future.
I
So
love
again,
it.
thank
Yes.
you so much for being here. And thanks to all of the beautiful listeners out there for allowing yourself to expand in this vibration today, receive these beautiful healing codes and feel your heart opening up. You are so worthy and deserving of everything that you desire on this planet. And I look forward to serving you in another episode. Namaste.